Welcome back to another edition of the Quick Bricks NBA DFS podcast, brought to you by the good guys over at Fantasy Degens. As always, Sean Mitchell here at smitchell17 on the Twitter machine. It is Wednesday, January 8th of the 2020 year. Hopefully everybody is enjoying their day. We have a nice big 9-game slate on tap for today in the NBA Association. It's a pretty nice slate, not just too overwhelmingly lots of great games, so we're going to have to really pick and choose on this slate, but it's not bad. Let's go ahead and jump right into it. We'll talk about the games, talk about spreads, totals, and the pace. First game that we have is going to be San Antonio Spurs traveling into Boston over in TD Gardens to take on the Celtics. Boston is minus 6.5 here at home, 219.5 on the total. We have San Antonio coming in as the 13th fastest team over their last 10 games. Boston is the 19th fastest over their last 10. San Antonio has been around with a little bit of pace. Good spot for both teams here, I believe. I think even though it's a 6.5 point spread, I think this game stays closer than anticipated, and it's actually the second highest total on the board. Third highest, sorry. So it's a good spot, good total. I think it'll have good flow. Couple spots, obviously, we're going to attack in that one. Next game, we have the Heat going into Indiana to play the Pacers. Indiana minus 6.5 here at home, 209.5 on that total. Both of these teams coming in really slow over their last 10. Miami 28th and Indiana 29th. So low total. It's looking like it's going to be a snail pace type of game. Not really just a whole lot to like in this game for me. It's almost a game that I can almost cross off just kind of waiting on to see. I know Domantas Sabonis is questionable. If he sits, then there might be a play for like Miles Turner. We'll talk about that here in a minute. Next game, we got the Washington Wizards going into Orlando to take on the Magic. Orlando is a 10.5 point home favorite here, 221 on the total. Washington has ranked 12th over their last 10 in terms of pace. Orlando has actually ranked 18th. It is a really nice pace-up spot for the Magic here. We know every game that the Wizards play in can have a 230, 240 total. They don't play a whole lot of defense, and they really like to run the floor. Brad Beal is still questionable. Like I said, this is the highest total on the board other than the Rockets and the Hawks that we will get to. So second highest total on the board, 221. It's a really good spot. And yeah, I'm not too sure about the Orlando minus 11 here at home. I don't really think that Orlando should be a 10-point favorite over any NBA team at the moment. The Wizards have actually been winning in these dog spots, so that's something that's really interesting. Next game, we have the Raptors going into Charlotte to take on the Hornets. We've got the Raptors here on a back-to-back. Toronto is still a 3.5 point road favorite. Small total here, 208. Toronto 24th over their last 10 in terms of pace. Charlotte 30th. Charlotte continues to be dead last in pace. They are very slow. Toronto has actually fallen back to they've fallen back quite a bit as well in terms of pace as well. Like you can see, 24th over their last 10. Not really a big game that I really like. Obviously, you get the Raptors here on a back-to-back going into Charlotte. Charlotte's just not a very good team. So we'll move on. Rockets at the Hawks. Here's your game of the night. Obviously, Houston going into Atlanta as an 8-point favorite. 234 points on the total. And I'll tell you why. It's because Houston ranks third over their last 10 in terms of pace. Atlanta, number 1. This game should be very, very fast. It's already been noted that Russell Westbrook is going to sit. Obviously, everybody's going to probably load up on Harden, and I do not do not blame you or me any at all, because I obviously will as well. His usage rate is through the roof. I mean, it's just crazy. So that game obviously is going to be the chalk game of the night. Then we have the Nuggets going into Dallas to take on the Mavericks. Dallas minus 3.5 here at home, 218 on the total. Denver 25th over their last 10 in terms of pace. Dallas 21st. Dallas has actually slowed down a little bit. Obviously, Dallas still without Kristaps Porzingis. It's interesting. Luka Doncic and James Harden on the same slate. Who are you going to pick, right? All right, so we have the Bulls going into New Orleans. Pelicans on a back-to-back here. They just played without Drew Holiday last night, and I believe he's out once again. Chicago is a 5.5 point road dog here going into New Orleans. We do not have a total. waiting to see Laurie Markkanen is probable. Wendell Carter Jr. has already been rolled out, I believe. So kind of still waiting on some news in this game. That's why I guess we don't have a total. Chicago 23rd over the last 10 in terms of pace. New Orleans Pelicans 10th. We know Pelicans usually run with a lot of pace. This is a good pace up spot for Chicago. We've seen them actually play up to the pace, like with Milwaukee. We've seen them play up to the pace with Milwaukee. So I think this game is going to be one that we're going to definitely want to target. Last two on the slate, we have the Knicks going into Utah. Knicks on a back-to-back after they just got obliterated by the Lakers last night. Taking on the Jazz. Utah 11.5-point home favorite. 219 on the total. New York Knicks coming in as the second fastest team over their last 10 games. Utah 27th. So I'm guessing this is going to be a massive pace-up spot here for Utah, right? As long as the Knicks can hang around, I suppose. Then you have your nightcap, the late night hammer, with the Bucks traveling into Golden State. Milwaukee minus 14 on the road, no total. Milwaukee is 7th over their last 10 in terms of pace. Golden State is 9th. So this is going to be a really good fast-paced game as well. D'Angelo Russell has already been rolled out. I'm not really sure about Draymond. So that's going to be something to watch for. It looks like Giannis is probable. Not really too much other than that, but there is no total. I highly expect this game to be in the 220s. So those are the games and the pace. Let's go ahead and hop right into the positionals. We'll start with the point guard spot. Luka Doncic at 12.3, over 61 in his last four. He's put up a triple-double basically in his last four as well. Over 74 in his last two. I'm sorry, triple-double in his last two. My fault. But nonetheless, like I said, over 74 fantasy points in his last two. Over 30 real points in his last four straight. Luka Doncic is just amazing. Gets a kind of a slower spot here against the Nuggets, but the total's still pretty decent. And his usage without Kristaps is through the roof. So yeah, it's going to be pretty hard to pick between Luka and Harden. But I think that Harden is obviously in just a little bit of a better spot here on the road in Atlanta. Nonetheless, we'll go on. After Luka, we got Trae Young at 9.7. He's carried a 33.6% usage rate over his last five. Houston is allowing the fifth most fantasy points to the point guard spot over their last 10. And he has topped 50 fantasy points in his last 8 of 9 games. Trae Young is definitely going to be in play here against the Hawks against the Rockets at home. It's a great spot. Houston doesn't play any defense. It's the highest total on the board. You might just want to pivot to Trae Young. I mean, I know, don't get me wrong. We've seen some point guards put up 60-plus on the Rockets. It can very well happen. Trae Young can very well do it. Kemba, if he comes back after his illness, he's 8.1. Nonetheless, he's went for over 40 fantasy points in his last two. San Antonio allowing the ninth most of that point guard spot over their last 10. Would be a good spot here at home for Kemba if he does return. Lonzo Ball at 7.4. His price has gone up drastically, but he's been producing 43, 55, 38, and 65 in his last four. Over 30 minutes in his last six is very encouraging. He's kind of got his role back. They are obviously without Drew Holiday and should be without him again tonight, so Lonzo's usage will obviously continue to be high. And I fully expect him to go for 40-plus here. So I do see value at 7.4 still. I think the price is still fair enough. Jamal Murray at 7.2. Dallas allowing the seventh most fantasy points to that point guard spot over their last 10. He's put up 39, 53, 42 in his last three. He's carried a 23.4% usage rate in his last three. He gets a 2.5% usage bump with that Will Barton, who has already been ruled out. So that's a good number. Obviously, his usage would probably be around 25%, which is really good. It's a good spot here against Dallas. And he has played over 34 minutes in his last three. So in those last three games that he's done really well, he's played lots of minutes. Hopefully that continues. They're going to need him. Obviously, being down Will Barton is something. So Jamal Murray at 7.2, I'm totally fine with. Ish Smith at 5.8, 31-plus minutes in his last 4 of 5, 28 or more fantasy points in his last 4 of 5. He's put up 37 and 54.3 in his last two. Carrying a 24.9% usage rate in his last 5 games. If Smith has been getting it done, IT is really not. So, even though IT is still starting, if Smith is still coming in and playing tons and loads of minutes. So, at 5.8, or even, I didn't even write IT down because I'm just not going to play him. But nonetheless, Ish is the play there. Markel Fultz on the flip side at 5.8. 20 field goal attempts last game, which is very encouraging. Put up 40.3 fantasy points. He's played 29 or more minutes in his last 4. Gets a nice little pace up spot here with Washington at home. 20.8% usage rate in his last 5 games. Markel Fultz has been coming around a little bit. This should be the game that he should smash. It's funny because every game that Washington plays in, we're like, okay, yeah, we're going to play everybody against Washington. And we've really seen them put up a lot of duds against Washington. A lot of the best plays have put up duds here lately. So tread with caution, but this is a good spot. Not really sure how good I feel about paying almost $6K for Markel Fultz. But here we are. Elfrid Payton at 5.7 put up 33 last night against the Lakers in a blowout. So 29 or more in his last 5 of 7 games, over 30 fantasy points in his last 3 of 7, over 30 minutes in his last 5 of 6. So Elfrid just had a baby. Hopefully we get some more of that baby narrative tonight. They are going into Utah where they are a pretty big dog, so may not, but nonetheless, it's a decent spot here for Elf at 5.7. Deontay Murray at 5.4 is a spot that I really want to attack. Boston is allowing the 3rd most fantasy points to the point guard spot over their last 10. Even with Kima back, I really like it. 19.4% usage rate over his last 4, which is very low. But he's had a 124.6 offensive rating over his last 4 as well. He's been playing really well. Over 33 fantasy points in his last 2 of 3. 29 plus in his last 4 of 6 as well. His minutes have not been where we want. He only played 26 last game. He's kind of been hovering around that 24 to 26 to 27 range. We really want him to see over 30. But he's 5.4. We know that he has decent upside. I don't mind the price. I don't mind the spot. I'm totally fine with Deontay Murray. DJ Augustine as well for the Magic at 5.3. Put up 30 fantasy points last game, played 28 minutes. He's now put up over 25 fantasy points in his last 4 of 5. Averaging 28 minutes per game, 28.3 minutes per game over his last 5 as well. 21.3% usage rate over his last 5 to boot. So DJ Augustine continues to be a big part of the rotation. He's playing, like I said, close to 30 minutes a night. And it's a good spot for Washington, right, against Washington. TJ McConnell, if you want to go there at 4.4, looks like Malcolm Brogdon is questionable. Don't know if he's going to play. Nonetheless, McConnell has now played 21 or more minutes in his last 4 or 5. He's put up 21 or more fantasy points in his last 3 or 4. TJ McConnell continues to be a pretty staple guy off the bench there. Going over to the shooting guard spot, again, James Harden at 12.8, just put up an 83.3 fantasy point game in his last game. Without Russell Westbrook, he sees a 46.8% usage rate. Yeah, just let that one soak in for a minute. He gets an 8.9% usage bump without Russ, which equates to roughly an extra average about 8 fantasy points. So whenever he's averaging close to 60 fantasy points, you go ahead and tack on about 8 or 9 more without Russ. So that one's going to be really interesting. It's a great spot. James Harden. He's almost 13,000, but I guarantee you he probably hits value. Zach LaVine at 8.9 I think is a great pivot. Obviously, I don't think he can get to 70, but I think that Zach LaVine in this spot here against the Pelicans on the road is in a good spot. He's averaging a 30.7% usage rate over his last 3. He's put up over 42 in his last 3. He's played 38, 39, and 38 minutes. The Pelicans are missing Drew Holiday, so that's a plus for him as well because Drew Holiday's a pretty decent defender. That leaves them, having to play somebody else on LaVine, which is really good. Do I think that LaVine can put up 45 plus? I do. I think this is a good spot. It's a pace-up spot for the Bulls. And LaVine is, like I said, over 30% usage rate. I'm totally fine with Zach LaVine. Jaylen Brown at 7.4, over 40 fantasy points in his last 6 of 9 games. Gets a nice little pace-up opportunity here with San Antonio. 28.2% usage rate over his last 3, which leads the team. Jaylen Brown's been getting it done. I really like his price at 7.4 against San Antonio tonight. Terry Rozier at 6.7. Every time, needless to say, the last 3 games I've wanted to put Terry Rozier on my podcast, and I just couldn't do it. So I'm going to do it tonight because he's went for 30, 39, 42, and 40 in his last 3. No, sorry, that was minutes. He's played 39, 42, and 40 minutes in his last 3 games. Toronto gets Toronto here on a back-to-back. He's also put up 42, 51, and 46 fantasy points in his last 3. 25.1% usage rate over his last 3 games as well. He leads the team. It's been Rozier lately. Devontae Graham is kind of, he's been good. He's still putting up 35, 37 fantasy points a game. But Terry Rozier has been the guy that's been staying on the floor all game. It's a good spot here, getting Toronto at home on a back-to-back. So I'm totally fine with Terry Rozier. I don't think anybody will play him. Jordan McRae will be another must-play if Brad Bill happens to sit once again. 39.8 and 50 fantasy points in his last 2 of 3. 33.5% usage rate over his last 3 games, leads the team. And Orlando is allowing the 4th most to that shooting guard spot over their last 10 games. So McRae obviously will be in a great spot once again, especially if Bradley Beal sits. Joe Ingles at 6.2K. New York Knicks allowing the 3rd most fantasy points to the shooting guard spot over their last 10. He's fresh off a 39.5 point fantasy effort against the Pelicans. He's went for over 32 fantasy points in his last 3 of 5. Joe Ingles continues to get it done. Yeah, it's a good spot, again, of course. Kevin Huerter at 6.2, over 38 fantasy points in his last 4. Great spot here against Houston, who's allowing the 8th most of that shooting guard spot over the last 10. Over 32 minutes in his last 4 games, 21.9% usage rate over his last 4. Huerter's been playing really well lately. He gets a good spot here at home against a team that doesn't play a lot of defense. And he's put up good numbers, over 38 fantasy points in his last 4 games. How do you argue with that at 6.2K? I don't see how you do. Alec Burks at 5.8, 45.8 fantasy points in his last home game. Gets Milwaukee here in a nice pace-up spot. Obviously a big total. I'm assuming it'll be a big total. They are a pretty big dog here, but they're still without D'Angelo Russell. So Alex Burks will continue to be he'll continue to be a play as long as D'Angelo Russell is out. J.J. Redick at 5.1. He looked like he was the one who was the main beneficiary of the Drew Holiday sitting. 27 or more minutes in his last 3 games. He's put up 29, 29, and 25 fantasy points in those 3 as well. Played 31 minutes last game. That's really encouraging. And like I said, put up 29 fantasy points. Not as much as we would want, but nonetheless, he's getting the minutes. The volume's there. He's going to continue to shoot. So J.J. Redick, I'm totally fine with against the Bulls here at home. Eric Gordon at 4.4. Obviously, no Russell Westbrook should allow him to see probably 30-plus minutes. He's already saw 26 and 30 minutes in his last 2. He's only put up 18, 17, 29, and 25 fantasy points in his last 4. I think this is an excellent opportunity for him. Obviously, against the Hawks, if they get up a little bit, Eric Gordon could potentially play the whole second half. At 4.4, yeah, I'm a fan of Eric Gordon. I really believe that he probably will be chalk, which is not great, but you got to kind of play him in this spot. Tim Hardaway Jr. returned. He's 4.4 tonight. He played 22 minutes in his first game back. He put up 27 fantasy points. Yeah, I think it's once again, it's a decent spot. No Kristaps allows him to garner a little bit of that usage from Luka. So THJ at 4.4, I think I'm fine with here against the Nuggets at home, who are going to be without Will Barton. So moving on to the small forward spot, Giannis at 11.5. He's the cheapest of the studs tonight. His price is up a little bit actually, but Golden State, is allowing the 9th most of that power forward spot over the last 10, and he's top 60 in his last 2 or 3. So Giannis, I mean, if you want to go there and get a little bit of a cheaper spot, yeah, I guess I don't blame you. Brandon Ingram at 8.8. Chicago's allowing the number 1 fantasy points to the power forward spot over their last 5. He's put up 43, 57, 46, and 45 in his last 4 at home. 5 at home. 4 at home. Sorry, 4. Carrying a 28.4% usage rate still getting it done. Put up I think a 60-pointer last game or so, 56 to 60. Had a really good game. He continues to be solid. He will definitely continue to be solid without Drew Holiday getting a little bit of bump of usage, so that's always good for Brandon Ingram. DeMar DeRozan at 6.8, 38, 40, 38, 42, 46, 35, 51. That's his last 5 or 6 games. Yeah, continues to be under 7K here. The guy just gets no respect. I don't know. Play DeMar DeRozan. Troy Brown Jr. at 5.4. 31, 36, and 36 minutes in his last three is very encouraging. 26, 22, 51, 28 fantasy points in those last four as well. We've seen the upside, put up 51. He's actually played a lot more minutes here over the last couple of games, which obviously should create more opportunities. So I'm totally fine with Troy Brown at 5.4. Thad Young at 5.4 as well. Wendell Carter Jr. has already been ruled out. Daniel Gafford looks like he is probable, but who knows how much he will play. Thad Young has played 27 and 28 minutes in his last two. He put up 21 and 33 fantasy points in those two as well. Gets a nice pace-up spot here with New Orleans. He should see minutes. So Thad Young at 5.4, if you want to go there, I'm totally fine with. Miles Bridges at 5.1. He has put up 34 or more in his last 3 or 4 games. He's playing lots of minutes. He's played over 28 minutes in his last 6 or 7. Plays lots of minutes. He's one of the staples on the Hornets, and Toronto's allowing the 6th most to that small forward spot over their last 10 games. So I'm totally fine with some Miles Bridges in tournaments for sure. Each-one more at 4.9 is also another Pelican that's gained a little bit of time lately. He's played 25 or more minutes in his last 3 or 4. He's put up 21, 25, 40, and 28. He did have a floor game of 12.5 in there mixed with it, so you obviously see the floor, but you see the upside as well as he put up 40 fantasy points. He's taken 14 or more field goal attempts in his last 3 or 4, and it's a little bit of a revenge game against Chicago, right? Each-one more played for Chicago for a little bit. So if you're into that, I'm totally fine with each-one more. His price is up there a little bit, but we've seen what he can do. Dorian Finney-Smith continues to be a cash staple at 4.7. He's played 32, 31, 28, and 38. Okay, sorry. Let me start over. 32, 31, 28, 38, 37 minutes in his last 5. He has gone for 23 or more fantasy points in his last 4 or 5 as well. Yeah, he's going to continue to play heavy minutes. He starts, he stays on the floor. He does a lot of good things, just doesn't exactly get the usage. Rudy Gay at 4.3. He's put up 21, 28, 29 fantasy points in his last 3 games. He's played 21, 22, 25 minutes. Here we go with Rudy Gay sucking us right back in. He's just cheap, though. I mean, he's really cheap. Spurs are in a decent spot here against the Celtics with him coming off the bench. I'm totally fine with Rudy Gay, I believe. Patrick McCall at 3.9. Played 36 minutes last night. Only put up 21 fantasy points. We've seen the upside with McCall, though. He's put up a 40-pointer already. He's going to get run. It looks like Fred VanVleet is going to miss extended time. McCall has been the starter every single time. Terrence Davis only played 8 minutes last night, so it's safe. Pat McCall at 3.9 is just safe, all right? Michael Porter Jr. is one that I forgot that I put down here at the bottom. He's 3.8 with no Will Barton. He could likely start at the 3. That's going to be really good news, obviously. So Michael Porter at 3.8 could potentially start, so be looking there. Power forward, looks like Sabonis is questionable. Not really sure what happened to him, but he is questionable for tonight. Don't know if he's going to play. It is worth noting that Miles Turner gets a 6.5% usage bump without Sabonis on the floor, which equates to about 8.23 more fantasy points on average per 36. So he gets a 6.6% usage bump, 8.23 bump in fantasy points as well per 36. So be on the lookout if Sabonis sits. Turner might be in a really good spot. John Collins at 8K against Houston. Obviously, he likely will see a lot of PJ Tucker, which I'm totally not, I'm fine with, but I'm not totally in love with, especially at 8K. But it is a very fast-paced game, highest total on the board, and he's went for 32 or more in his last 3 or 5 at home. It's up to you if you want to play Collins. Julius Randle at 7.6 has now put up a double-double in his last 4 or 5. Over 35 fantasy points in his last 7 games. Over 31 minutes in his last 6 or 7 as well. He's shot at least 14 times or more in his last 8. Julius Randle, he put up 35 last night in a revenge spot against the Lakers. Going into Utah tonight, I'm a little bit more prone to want to play him at 7.6. He's going to get like Bojan Bogdanovic. Of course, he has to deal with a little bit of Rudy Gobert, but I think this is a lot better spot than he had last night against the Lakers. LaMarcus Aldridge at 7.3. You're going to keep going back to that well. 33, 35, 66, 48, and 37 in his last 5 on the road. He's played over 33 minutes in his last 4. We know that Boston struggles against bigs. Looks like they could be without Daniel Tice as well tonight. So LMA, yeah, I'm a fan. Bullion again and Bogdanovic. He took 21 field goal attempts last game. He put up 35 real points and fantasy points. That's wise because he put up no other counting stats, just 35 points. That's it. No rebounds, no assists, no steals, nothing. Which is pretty impressive. But nonetheless, Bullion at 6.4. We know he's going to continue to shoot. He's a shooter. So if you want to go there, I'm totally fine. Aaron Gordon at 6.2. Washington allowing the fifth most of that power forward spot over their last 10. Over 31 in his last 3. Over 31 minutes in his last 3 as well. Of course, this is a nice pace-up spot for Orlando, so I really like some Aaron Gordon at 6.2. Rondé Hollis-Jefferson, 25 more minutes in his last 4. Over 21 fantasy points in his last 4. Charlotte, allowing the fourth most of that power forward spot. Rondé Hollis-Jefferson is going to continue to see decent minutes with all the injuries, of course. So at 4.9, I'm totally fine with some RHJ. Trey Lyles, if you want to get punny worth, 3.6. He's played 20 and 24 minutes in his last 2, 25 and 26 fantasy points in those last 2. So if you're feeling froggy, want to play some Trey Lyles, I'm totally fine with it. Against Boston, I think I'm really fine with it. Hopefully he sees 20 to 24 minutes. Moving over to the center spot, I'm not playing Jokic. I'm not chasing the 70-pointer that he just put up against Atlanta because Atlanta's terrible. I would rather drop down about 5 to 600 and play Vucevic at 9K. Washington is terrible against the center spot. It's a nice pace-up spot here for Orlando. He's put up over 40 fantasy points in his last 7 straight, and he's played 31 or more minutes in his last 11 straight. Give me all the Vuce. I don't really care. He should absolutely smash this game. Bam Adebayo at 8.3. He just put up 47 fantasy points last game against Indiana. He's playing Indiana. He just put up 47 last game. He's went for 35 or more in his last 5 of 6. He could be without Sabonis tonight, so that's a big plus for him if all he has to deal with is basically Miles Turner. I like Bam at 8.3 here quite a bit. I'm sorry, he went for 37 or more in his last 3 or 4. I missed that part. Nonetheless, still like Bam. It's a great spot. 37 or more in his last 3 or 4, 47 last game. And, of course, Indiana could be without Sabonis, so that's a plus for him. Rudy Gobert, I really like the price here at 7.9. His price is just right. It's came down quite a bit, like over $1,100 on DK. And then at his home games, 48, 42, 44, 43, and 42, and 50. Yeah, gets New York on a back-to-back here. Really like some Rudy Gobert tonight. I think he's priced just right. I think there's decent value at 7.9 for him. Serge Ibaka at 7.8. Charlotte allowing the 6th most of that center spot over their last 10. 34 or more fantasy points in his last 7 of 8. 32 plus minutes in his last 4 of 5. Good spot once again for Serge in Charlotte against the Hornets. Clint Capella at 7.8. 59.5 fantasy points last game against Philadelphia. Jokic just put up 70 plus against this same Atlanta team. I highly expect Capella to pull down probably 25 boards tonight. Capella's in a great spot again. Atlanta's terrible, allowing the 2nd most to the center spot over the last 10. Derek Favors at 7.3. Chicago struggles against the center spot as well. He's put up over 31 fantasy points in his last 7 games. He's played 28 or more minutes in his last 4. Really encouraging stuff for Favors at 7.3 against Chicago, especially without Wendell Carter Jr. Something to keep in your back pocket. Derek Favors is in a good spot at home. Enes Kanter at 5.6. Obviously, if Tyus doesn't play, he's put up over 34 fantasy points in his last 3 or 4. Had kind of a dud game last game, but the minutes are still there. And he should see over 20 minutes once again, especially if Tyus is out. So keep that one in mind. Playing the Spurs, who is decent. Daniel Gafford again at 4.8. If Wendell Carter is out, which he is, Gafford is probable. He played 25 minutes last game, put up 27 fantasy points. Gets a nice little pace-up spot here against New Orleans. So Daniel Gafford, if you want to go there at 4.8, I think I'm fine with that. Excuse me. Chris Boucher at 4.1. Charlotte, of course, like I said, allowing the 6th most of that center spot. He played 16 minutes last night, put up 29 fantasy points. The guy's a fantasy point per minute beast. At 4.1, you can kind of take a shot on him in tournaments, obviously, especially in a good spot against Charlotte. All right, this pod has lasted 29.5 minutes. I did perfect. Hope you guys enjoy your Wednesday. Like I said, this wraps up the January 8th edition of the Quick Bricks NBA DFS podcast. Let's talk about some basketball later, guys. Enjoy your Wednesday.